I'm scanning the screen. I think I'll go ahead and segue into what I had in mind to talk about, and it does relate. I mean, hopefully everything relates. If it doesn't relate, you should all just hang up and go do something else, right? So we've been spending a fair amount of time, somewhat in sequence. First, this notion expressed by the koan, how do you step from the top of 100-foot pole? You know, you've had some experience of enlightenment. You've seen some sliver of the way. You've got some grasp around your true nature and how it relates to everything else. What do you do? What do you do then? And we've talked about, well, you know, get to work, step back into it, get off of that peak, get off of that pole, and get back to work. And then last week, we talked about some of the effects of the practice when we have an experience of realization, bring it into our lives. And what does that mean? And so those of you that were with the talk last week, we did some practice around expressing that. How do I express what this practice has done for me, and what does it mean to me? And you know, you could look at that, okay, that's cute, Dan, you're creating a bunch of missionaries to go out there and effectively sell Zen, but that's not really the point. It came out of a conversation of, I have had this experience through Zen and it has changed me or changed my life. How do I walk in my normal life, you know, that other life? And of course, there aren't two lives, but you know, that question of how do I relate to friends that I have had that don't share this language? What do I do about people that it feels like they're going to pull me off the path or be a negative influence? How do I do this? And so we did some practice around that last week of how do we be in the comings and goings of our everyday life, whether we've had deep, profound experience or just a glimmer of what it means to see one's true nature. This week, I wanted to talk about the flip side of some of this because there's so much emphasis often in the literature and even in the training around that experience, right? Kensho, Satori, absolute samadhi, positive samadhi. The book we studied, Yamada Roshi, talking about the supreme importance of the realization experience and striving for that and having the great determination and faith and doubt that gets you to that place. There's a little bit of a danger in the practice, the way it's set up, is that the Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to attain it. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them. The dharmas are inexhaustible. I vow to master them. You know, delusions are inexhaustible. I botched that line. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. There's a lot of this kind of really definite, I'm going to end this, I'm going to attain this, I'm going to save them. If you look at even the beginning part of our practice as we do an introduction to Zen, count from 1 to 10. Count your breath. 1, 2, 3. When you get to 10, go back to 1. If you find yourself following a thought, go back to 1. And somebody out there on the Zoom, tell me what the number 10 is. Anybody explain the number 10 to me? Just jump in. I'll call on you. Somebody, what's the number 10? All right, Mark Riggs, what's the number 10? You have to unmute yourself.
Just the number after 9.
The number after 9. Beautifully put. And what's the number 3?
Just the number after 2 and the number before 4.
Right. So is 10 better than 3? No.
Nope.
No. And yet we're set up to, like, I want to get to 10. And I called on Mark because I know he and I share certain forms of ambition. You know, I mean, I'm like hugely ambitious, right? And it's fun to win. But what is 10? And is Tennessee on the call? No, Tennessee's not on the call, and I don't see any children on the call. So Tennessee and I were talking once about this. Well, I can't get anywhere close to 10. Some days it's just 1, 2, 1, 1, 1. And so we crafted a practice together in that interview, and it was called One What the Fuck. So I hope that's not too offending to anyone. But it was just, one WTF, one WTF, one WTF, because it's all just awareness. It's all just awareness. What color of Rakasu are you wearing? What color of Kesa are you wearing? What koan are you on? How well are you sitting? How is your practice? Are you getting to 1? Marsh, how's Shikantazu going, right? It's like there's always this question, how am I doing? How am I doing? And the practice has stages and it has progression, and it does help us know how we're doing. The trick is not to get too attached to it. What is your expectation, as we said in the newsletter, of the practice? Because a lot of suffering can actually come out of that expectation. Well, wait a minute, this was supposed to be about the end of suffering. I'm having a really hard day, a really hard week. 2020 sucks. What happened to Zen? This isn't working. This isn't working. I quit. This was supposed to do this. I should be feeling this way. I should be feeling that way. If only I could, then I would. There's a reason it's called practice, and I love this. There's a reason it's called practice. Because we all are Buddha. We all have Buddha nature and a peaceful, joyful, centered, calm spirit that is our birthright with us every moment. And the practice is the practice of getting rid of everything that's in the way of that. And we practice just like we practice serving in tennis. I serve. Well, I hit the net. I serve again. Oh, went too far. I serve again. But they hit it back. Let's practice. We practice. And that raises this concept, which you've heard me talk about before, master practicing. We are masters practicing versus practicing to be a master. We have this expectation that if we do this and do that and do this and do that and get to this koan or get to 10 or, that then everything will be right. Then everything will be right. So we spend our lives practicing to be a master rather than being masters practicing. This is a little bit more apparent in art, where you are I am an artist and I'm practicing the art of my art. I am a musician and I'm practicing. In other parts of our lives, we are always practicing to be something, but that something is what we are. Zeno's paradox, some of you have heard me mention this before, but it's a great way to look at this too. Zeno's paradox is if I'm a certain distance from the wall and I walk halfway to the wall, and I walk halfway to the wall, and I walk halfway to the wall, and then I walk half of that distance to the wall, and then I walk half of that distance to the wall, do I ever make it to the wall? No. If you go halfway there, you don't get there. So you might as well just claim the wall. And then practice being the wall, practice being at the wall, rather than all these baby steps to say someday, someday, someday. It's on my mind a lot, and I hopefully this is not TMI, but I cannot claim sobriety at this point. It's not having a beer is not taking me down as far as I know, but my understanding is, and you guys can nod if you want, but right, you declare your sobriety and then you practice it day by day. I've read the book enough to know that, right? You declare that intention, you declare that state of being, and then you practice it. And sometimes we fail, and then we practice it again. Zen is like that, and held that way, it's a beautiful thing, and we can have a sense of humor about it. I was having a conversation with a young man earlier this week about these high expectations we have of perfection and no failure and attainment and achievement, and how they're like the Dementors in Harry Potter hovering over the world, sucking all the oxygen and life out of everything, out of life. And I've told the story before of my son when he was 14 saying, "It is impossible to be your son because you hold standards so high for yourself that there's no room for any error for you or anyone else. It's impossible." And so I had to practice letting go of that. It was very apparent that my ideas and concepts of what it was to get it right was crushing the people around me. So I just wanted to this morning spend a little time looking at that flip side, right? Zen has changed my life. It's done this and that. It's the most amazing thing. You should try it. Finding your own natural expression of what that is for you, because it is beautiful and it does free people, right? Step off the top of the 100-foot pole and get to work. And love yourself and love your practice in its imperfection. Suzuki Roshi said life is one series of mistakes, one mistake after another. There's the metaphor of a pilot flying a plane, is that you don't actually fly the plane straight. You're always correcting the plane going off course. It's a series of corrections. And the precepts are like that. I vow to affirm all life and not to kill. So, that has all forms. Eating a plant is taking a life. We need to eat. All of the precepts, I vow not to be stingy, especially with the Dharma. We fail on them. We fall short. But that falling short is the practice. The falling short is how we know we're alive and breathing and have somewhere else to go. And we need to love ourselves through that process too. And so, it's a bit of self-testimonial on me, because Mark, as we've discussed, I love getting it right. But the fact of the matter is, when I'm running an ultra marathon, as Ken knows, I am not the fastest guy out there. I'm never going to be the fastest guy out there. But, I can cross the finish line with Lori after 100 miles, and after 20 miles of hiking, like I was going to die, because after 80 miles, that's all I had left in me. And then all of a sudden, miraculously, 500 yards from the finish line, both of us are running. Like all of a sudden, we're running again. I'll have to share that video. It's very sweet. Lori jumped in and ran the last 20 miles with me of that race. You pick it up and you run again. So just a caution, cautionary love is to love the process and love the practice, and remember that whether you're on koan 13 or koan 187 of the Dharmakaya, whether you've sown your raksu or not, no matter where you are in your practice or out of your practice, this is it. This is it. It's right here. We practice this. We don't practice that. We practice this. And that's where we're going to have the most effect in our lives and in the lives of people around us, is to honor this moment, this day. And have a little levity and sense of humor around it. So I'm right about at the time I wanted to take, but let me open it up to any comments or questions or observations from the gang. So over to all of you. Galen.
Yeah, it's really good to be back and to hear you talk, Dan. Your approach to this is so down to earth and humane. It's really inspiring in a way. So there was a ton of stuff that came up for me. One being, how do you practice? How do we take this practice into situations like 2020, like living in the fire zone, like COVID, like the social inequities and clusterfuck that we find ourselves in. The thing about practice to me, and I tend to go back to music. It's having practiced something over and over becomes very familiar, and you just do it again and again because it's something you've done before. And this notion of not knowing what's going to happen, that is after a few years, it came to me like everything's unexpected. It doesn't, it's not really different now that all of these challenges are popping up. It's that, every day of my life has been that way. I never knew what was going to happen. I always had to adapt to it, So, I'm real grateful for the way I've been trained when, when these, once again, challenges, arise. in terms of mastership, I love Tenshin Roshi's quote. His father and his grandfather were master carpenters. And I've heard him say over and over, when he asked his father, what is it to be a master carpenter? And his dad said, a master is someone who makes features of their mistakes. I thought, what a great thing, that's, and Roshi says over and over, don't be afraid to make mistakes. In fact, if you're going to make a mistake, really make it, really commit to it and make it, take it all the way to the end until it stops you, because you're going to learn from that. You'll never do it again. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Another thing that popped up for me was you're talking about this notion of enlightenment. I'm constantly quoting Tenshin Roshi because I have such incredible respect for him, and I'm one of those who kind of believes it doesn't make sense to reinvent the wheel when when it's been perfected and it's round, and without really putting him up on a pedestal. I've heard him say too, like in the book that all of us probably have seen, The Three Pillars of Zen, he goes, that's a great book. That's a great book for the first 70 or 80 pages. And then he goes, if I had it to do myself, I would take all of that enlightenment experience records that were there and throw them away, burn them. He said, that's the worst thing that I've ever seen in terms of creating expectations for people. Oh, wow, that's what it's like. Okay, I'm going to try to get to that. Oh, here's another story. Oh, that's what it's like. Maybe I'll try to get that. When it doesn't ever come that way to any of us. It always comes to you in a very rare and unique way. It's such a different thing, to just get that glimpse, and that's all I'm claiming, just that glimpse, but it's so significant, and then that compulsion to elevate that experience and carry it around with yourself, with me, going, oh yeah, man, I had that experience, is it's great to have a teacher that just tells you, throw it away. Throw it away. What about now? How is it now? I remember when I first went to Yokoji, the first day I did my ZMI, and I walked in and didn't know what to expect and had never seen it. And people were all doing very strange things in terms of my experience. And finally, some guy in a different colored robe came in, and I was smart enough to know he must be significant, and he was. He went and sat down and said, thank you for coming. He looked around the room and said, what if after enlightenment, it's just like this? What if it's just like this after you become enlightened? And I went, I got to know what this guy's talking about. That's hooked me in 30 seconds. So anyway, I'm glad to be back and glad to see you all. Glad to see Charles and Tracy here. We missed you Friday night. Didn't report in to anybody. We were going to send out a crew to find you if we didn't hear from you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Galen. And Charles and Tracy, if you want to, please pass your contact information along to Galen, and we'll get you on the newsletter if you're not there already, and just so that we can be in contact and proselytize and put our hooks in you. No, that I can promise we will not do. Anybody else? Thank you, Galen.
Hi, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you, Galen. Happy birthday. It's great to see you again. And welcome everybody. I so appreciated your talk, Dan, because I'm very new at this, and I'm very, very hard on myself. And I had the great opportunity to go see Ken the other night for a great massage. And man, he just read me like a book. It was like there was no hiding anything. And I was so grateful for that, because what I've noticed in sitting is there's a lot of anger coming up, and I'm not like going out there being angry, but angry thoughts. Like there's this irritability and anger, and then I'm like grabbing onto things, and I'm holding onto it, and I'm remembering, and I'm ruminating. That's the word that Ken used, ruminating. And I felt like that was a failure. Like, oh my God, I'm slipping. That I'm not doing good at, Then again, there's that self-criticism, and listening to this, and then remembering that book that we just finished. I feel like, okay, you're okay. I do make mistakes. I do step on the toes of other people. I try to really, watch myself and clean my side of the street. Yet, I just want the idea that when I sit, it doesn't always have to be perfect. Like, what if enlightenment is just this? What if it is just today? And I was able to sit today, and the second half was hard. It was really hard for me to sit there, and that's okay. I showed up, and I just continued to do that. So I'm grateful for that, because I do have this barometer of expectation of perfection or where I'm supposed to be. And what if it's just sitting and counting? And what if it is 10 is just 10, and there's one again, and that's okay. And I'm really just trying to be okay with that, and just love myself where I am today, which some days it's easier than others, but anyways, that's enough. I just wanted to share that and say thank you for everybody, for this beautiful collective of people, and for what you all shared this morning.
Well, and Andrea, thank you. And remember, I know we've talked about this, that the one technique that I love so much, the gift we can give to ourselves, is hold the practice. Like, when anger comes up or any of these stuff comes up, we just use that expression, oh, there it is again. Oh, there it is again. And that just starts giving you a little bit more freedom around that. It's a gentler catch, right? You're still in the DMV line yelling at the person, but then there's this little bit of a smile and a little bit of humor around, oh, there it is again. And then you can move past, let it go. But I deliberately use that expression and in that tone of voice, because if you start using that tone of voice with yourself in your practice and in your life, it can have a profound effect. Not, oh, there I go again. It's just like, oh, there it is again. There she is again. There it is again. It's a little bit of a gentler handling of it and recognition, so that then you can work with it. So great work, Andrea. And on the expectations front, I could summarize the whole talk this morning with this phrase: expect exactly this. If you want to have expectations around anything, expect this. That's all we really have. Expect this. Well, then your expectation was just fulfilled. Now what? Anyway, a little bit of some fun ways to work with this. Anybody else?
I will. One thing I love about this practice is, like, I spend so much of my life trying to convince myself that I'm unique and I'm special and that nobody understands what I'm going through or what's happening in my life. And I come in here and I sit down and I struggle and I label if it was a good sit or I label if it was a bad sit. And then somebody takes the words out of my mouth, right out of my brain, and describes my experience. And just proves to me right there that it's like this for everyone. And it takes something out of that, and I don't want to say like it takes away from the experience as much as it adds to the experience. It kind of it makes us like a whole. Like I experienced the same thing with the first session I went to. As I sat there, and through the first 3 days, like my brain just telling me, like coming up with these stories about who this person was and how good they were at doing this and what they were thinking and what this was happening and what their life was. And at the end, like it just kind of dawns on you, like everyone's just sitting and they're all going through the same thing. Like their backs hurt, their butts hurt. At some point, they're going to be bored out of their minds, you know. And it gets to the point now where when I'm done, no matter what's happened during the sit, it's like that was a sit. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like if I struggle through it, if I have a good one, it's like the freedom is to come out of it and not feel the need to label what kind of sit it was. Like, oh, there it was. That was fantastic, just because it was exactly what it was. Whether I fall asleep, whether I'm able to stay awake through it, like it's what it is, and it's just such a wonderful experience because it literally just was what it was supposed to be.
Amazing.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and you are a unique person. It's so confounding, isn't it? Because you get to be yourself and you get to have your experience of life. You get to have the opportunities to make the choice with every breath, you know, to make the choice of where you're going with the next moment and how you see yourself in this moment. And it's crazy. Thank you.
Anything else for you?
I guess one thing that I wanted to say from the beginning of sitting today was that, you know, when we all get together, we do service on Sunday. That's just a given. And that's something we always do. We haven't done it during COVID. And every now and then it occurs to Dan or me or Dan and I at the same time that, well, let's do service for whatever today, or somebody has a request. But each one of you, whatever your experience is of life this week, past week, or something that's come up for you today, it's never too late to ask to do service in our sitting on Sunday. Okay, so every one of you is important. Don't forget that.
Nice. Thank you, Lori. Tracy and Charles, how are we doing? Sorry.
Hanging in there.
Yeah. No, I mean, how are we doing? That's me having expectations. I just want to check in with you. It's great to have you with us. I hope this is resonating in some way. So,
yeah.
One of the things that I picked up on in what everybody was saying was the whole practice thing. And for me, what happens is I practice something. All of a sudden, I discover that there are things there because of the way I see now because of my practice. And they've been there all along. But without the practice, I wasn't aware of them. And Galen knows me, I kind of get into a spin. But what happens is when I go too far, then I start thinking about people who I see whose behavior is not up to my expectations, whether it's political or social or familial. And what I wind up asking myself, and I know I shouldn't do it, but I go there, and this is where I have to practice on, is I wonder what the hell are they practicing? You know, for them to think and believe and act out in the way that they act out. And then I kind of push back and I try to focus more on me. And that's part of the practice, because before I used to spend countless hours trying to figure out why someone is the way they are. And as Galen always says, it depends on the perspective and context. And when I can put myself in there, or try to put myself in the context that they're operating in, or in the perspective that they're operating in, it makes it a little easier for me. So that's a practice that I try to practice all the time, is when I come across people who are, I guess the best way to say it is not on my side. I try to figure out, well, what happened in their experiences as they were growing up, or again, what the hell are they practicing?
Yeah.
But that's all.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple really nice things there. And you described one great technique for bridging the divide is what in that other person is me? You know, what in that behavior do I see in myself? And then you can work there. I know that for myself and many of us, some of the things that trigger us the most are when we see bad behavior that we actually know we are capable of. You know, and even if it's somebody on the other side of our political point of view doing something that we consider heinous, it's still, there's some, certainly from a Zen point of view, there's some me in that, you know, to look at and to start bridging that divide. The other thing you said that I just love, and I think I'll butcher this quote, but Michelangelo, you know, described sculpting, you know, from stone. Like many of us, if we're non-artists, we think, well, you know, there's a piece of stone and I start creating a shape. And he described it as his work was simply to reveal what was already there. And so as a process of taking away, just like our practice, taking away that which is in the way of revealing the beauty that is already there. And so, Charles, you touched on that at the beginning too. The practice is a constant practice of revealing what is there. So thank you. Thank you. Really good stuff.
So as this is bringing up for me in my way of in my practice with having trouble moving past mistakes or dealing with failure. I've been quite a perfectionist in my life, where if it doesn't meet certain expectations, you know, as far as I'm concerned, it's worth nothing, and I tend to give up. You know, I've been going back to school lately for the past couple of years, and I really had to get over that, because I used to just fail and drop classes because I wouldn't turn my work in. I just like, yeah, this isn't good enough. I'd rather fail than than take a chance on this. But you know, I guess where that ties into, you know, the Zen practice and also the rest of my life, you know, is I can get in the same place where, you know, maybe I got out of my sitting routine, or maybe within a session of sitting itself, I got distracted, where I can feel like, oh, it's ruined now. I mean, might as well just give up. You know, it's not perfect anymore. And so that's like a practice in itself, is just starting over, just going back. You know, that, you know, that's part of it. You know, and as long as, you know, I'm doing that, then, you know, I can make it as perfect as it can be, I guess, or it is, I guess it is perfect the way it is, would be another way of looking at it. Yeah, so that's all. Thanks.
Yeah, Brandon, thank you. I think you have a hair out of place there. If you get my meaning, right? You know, it's like we are, and what you described is, you know, it's very similar to my experience, right? That's striving for perfection, and You're younger than I am, so you know the Harry Potter reference might be missed because I've read them all to my son, you know. But do remember the Dementor and that sucking the oxygen out of the room, you know, that we can do. Because it doesn't just affect us, it does affect the people around us too. So see things as perfect, you know, is some freedom from that. You also reminded me of the other day was coming up the 5 to get off on the 2. And you know that moment where you're in the right-hand lane and somebody's going to merge in and you make that decision whether you're going to slow down to let them in or speed up to make room for them or just keep your speed and make them adjust or whatever. For some reason, I was in that right-hand lane and I decided that everything was okay, so I was going to keep going at my speed. Well, the guy in the pickup trying to merge in, he did not like that decision whatsoever, right? And he flipped me off as he pulled in right behind me, and he flipped me off, and I'm like, to Lori, I'm like, can you believe that? Like, what? I'm just supposed to make room. Like my whole life revolves around, and so I started spinning. Right? He's flipping me off. I'm starting to spin. We both go off on. It must not have been the 2. Yeah, we go off on the 2, and then we both got off on San Fernando Drive. So now I'm ahead of him, right? Because I made sure I was ahead of him. And here's flipped me off guy coming up beside me to be pulling the lane right beside me. And I look over and I just made a choice. And it wasn't a particularly saintly choice, but man, the effect was profound. His window was down on the passenger side and he had 2 little girls in the cab with him. This is the guy who flipped me off. And I looked over and I said, I'm sorry. And he got this big smile and nodded, and then we both drove away. And so, Charles, that's a little bit of too the seeing that other person, seeing myself in that other person, because man, I got hung up in it, right? And I was able to go, oh, there it is again, and muster an apology that completely changed. We both drove away in peace. You know, whereas normally I probably would have spent another 15 minutes going, God, people, the way they drive in LA, this is just ridiculous. And of course, I'm one of them.
Yeah, guess what? Well, and 2, we just keep going. I mean, it just, life is one foot in front of the other, no matter what. So, you know, it's like, I'm a creative person. I design gardens and I paint and all like that. And, you know, I make so many mistakes, and the mistakes actually walk me down the path to the solution and to what I want to create and what's there to create, what the opportunity is. So it's, I give up. I don't get to have that moment. I don't get to have that creation. I don't get to see it come into fruition. So we just have to keep going. Forgive ourselves. Keep going.
And thus 31 years of marriage. Anybody else before we do the 4 vows and ring us out for the morning and send you on your way to a happy Sunday of thusness and suchness and thisness?
I just want to say, first of all, hi, Matt Bowen. It's awesome to see you.
Right on, Jeff. What a joy, man. I saw you in one of the previous videos after I got a Prajna Heart email something, and I was like, I think that's Jeff. It was so cool, man.
Yeah,
so cool.
And then I just wanted to say, I really liked, Dan, what you said about the 4 vows. I know for me, like, I started practicing Zen in college, and when I came out and started studying at the Santa Monica Zen Center and they started doing the chants, I was like, what the is this, man? Seriously? Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Desires are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. How does that even, that's impossible. Who came up with this bullshit? but I do recognize lately when I say that vow, I just think similar to I think what you were pointing to. Really, if I can, sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them. If I can, in some way, save myself, even for a moment, and see beyond all of my delusions and nonsense, then in some way I am saving all sentient beings, even if it's just for that split second that I'm like clear. And I really appreciated your pointing to that. And I also just a little. Christine and I were swimming last night. I don't know, the other night, and we were listening to KCRW. There's a pool in her complex, and they played this Alan Watts talk that they put to music that's called "Listen." That's with I think it's Baracko or Barack. I don't know. If you look at Alan Watts in your iTunes or just wow, that's he really gets into that stuff, and it was very mind blowing as well. So
Great. Thank you, Jeff.
you guys.
Thank you for summarizing my whole 20 minutes of talk in like 2 months. We should have you do it.
That was indeed absolutely perfect, and I can totally relate, Jeff. The idea of like when I first got wind of this idea, all of this and all of that, the dharmas, the sentient beings, the and such. It was really something to confront. Like, what the heck? What are you talking about? And when I find myself without separation and saving of myself, if you will, that yeah, it's doable. It's quite a ride. I'm loving it.
It's awesome.
Great. Shalay, I just want to check in with you, and if you're good, you're good, and we'll do the vows.
I'm good. Thank you for asking. No, just enjoying the talk so much, and the things that people comment on. It's wonderful to hear all of it. I'm just enjoying quietly.
Thanks, Shalay. I'm still with you.